Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the worst films of 2012. The thing about doing a worst films list, and the reason I don't ever do a top 10 worst films of the year, is because most critics are forced to watch, not forced, but they're told they have to review certain films, and they get to see whatever they want, and I have to pay to see these movies, so I don't generally see things I would absolutely hate to see. So like Oogie Loves I didn't see, and things like that. When I make a worst films of the year list, the reason I don't do a top 10 is because of that, and also for a film to be, for me, considered the worst, it has to be something I don't think you should ever see ever, like so horribly bad, just a really terrible piece of shit that I just don't want you to see at all. And so if I'm really going to be like, this is one of the worst films of the year, I have to really hate it. And I only really disliked 4, and it was kind of a challenge to even do 4. I would only say 3. The 4th one I just kind of put on there so there'd be an extra one, be a little cooler. I don't know, maybe there will be a year where I will pick more than 4, but not this year. There's not enough of them that I feel like are so bad that I would put them on a list that is the worst films of the year. But I'm sure there are, plenty of negative reviews I've put out of other films, but I just chose not to include them in this because I didn't feel like they were the worst like these 4 certainly were. So number 4 is The Watch. It seems like you could make a really good movie with a cast like this, and it has a script written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who also wrote Superbad, and directed by Akiva Schaffer, who was from the SNL digital shorts. And all this sounds like something I actually wanted to see, and it's just not very good. It's sloppily made, it's just not very well shot or directed or put together. It has a serious problem with tone, like sometimes it likes to be dramatic. I think it's kind of like trying to be like a Kindergarten Cop era comedy, but infused with the newer kind of Apatow style, but it doesn't really understand how to do that very well. It just seems like a total absolute mess. All the performances are really flat. I think this is the worst I've ever seen Vince Vaughn. It's certainly one of the worst performances I've seen from Ben Stiller. Richard Ayoade really felt flat. Jonah Hill was funny in places, but it's really one of, like, compared to 21 Jump Street, I mean, it just doesn't feel like he cares that much. It doesn't feel like anybody really cared in this movie, I mean, they did show up, so that's something. It's such a mess and so flat and so stale. It's like everything I hate about modern comedy. Just not very well shot, obviously rushed. It's not very funny. They were trying to do 3-act, but with the Apatow style and trying to be loose, and we're so silly and goofy and like, we don't need a structure. I didn't think there was much in the script. I didn't think there was much in the direction. I didn't think there was much in the acting. There's really not much rewarding in this film. There's a couple of funny jokes in it, and you've seen them in the trailer. It's just bad. It's a bad movie. It's a bad comedy. The only movie I can think that's worse than this summer is Battleship. Okay, and the third, and these are the real stinkers here, and number 3 is Battleship. No one goes through film school and wants to grow up and be what Peter Berg did in this movie. He's just an assembly line crap director. There's nothing special about this. It's just another forgettable blockbuster. Like, were aliens in Battleship? Because when I played Battleship, it was just like a bunch of battleships, and then you sink them. And I would have actually liked just a simple film about 2 battleships shooting each other, or like a fleet of battleships shooting each other, and I didn't even really need much of a plot. I don't know why these movies think I need all these various plot lines going on. If it had maybe had a little bit of satire, it had a little sense of humor about itself. This film took itself way too seriously. It's kind of dull, and it's just like another forgettable summer movie with lots of explosions and a bunch of stars throughout. Battleship is everything people hate about Hollywood. Okay, and number 2 and number 1 honestly could have been a tie. And I kind of feel like number 2 is worse than number 1, but I just couldn't help but give what got number 1 number 1. So, number 2 is The Apparition. A bunch of college students who summon a demon, and in the trailer, it tells us that if you believe in the demon, the more you believe in it, the more it's real, and that it'll like kill you and stuff. And that was a movie I was like, hey, that sounds cool. I'd see that movie. That sounds, have horror deal with belief. That's not really this movie. The belief thing that's in the trailer, I couldn't find it in the movie. Like, there was never a part in the movie where he says that. I don't know if I missed it, if it was cut out, or if they just put it in later in the trailer for whatever reason. One of my biggest complaints with horror is that what really scares you in any horror movie is not knowing. I always hate when I see a horror movie and they overly explain things. By the third act, I know way too much. It kind of made me go, I'm eating my fucking words, because the thing I always hate is when they over explain things, and this movie is the exact opposite, and it is horrible. This is like the worst horror movie I've seen this year. I know Warner Brothers is just dumping this thing. They don't even like kind of the subsidiary that made it. They're not even opening it into 1,000 theaters. Frankly, I think Warner Brothers is doing a good job, because it's a bad movie. I don't know why they released it at all. I mean, they could have just thrown this in a vault somewhere, and I would have been fine with that. And it didn't make a lot of sense. Like, nothing connected. It has opportunities to be a good horror movie, and it doesn't use them. It's just stuff is lying there, and they refuse to use it. Number one, and this is definitely the worst film I saw. Not only the worst film, but one of the worst films that I like to tell people stories about when everyone says, like, what's one of the best theater experiences I had in the past year? It was probably seeing this movie, how the audience reacted to my number one pick for the worst film of the year, just because it's like the movie I want to hate the most. I don't want to watch it again. It's not I love to hate it. I mean, I do love to hate it, but I don't love to hate it enough to see it again. Whereas 2, The Apparition was just really bad, awful bad. But number 1, I just can't imagine doing a worst films of the year list and not putting this number 1 choice on there. And even though The Apparition, I mean, you could call it a tie, you know, ranking is silly anyway. The number 1 worst film of 2012 is The Devil Inside. The crowd I went with was really rowdy and really kind of spirited and would like yell back and go, oh shit, and like stuff like that. This movie's pretty horrible. The logic in it is stupid, but while I was watching it and the audience is like yelling, making stupid comments, I'm laughing at this movie, but I'm having a really good time laughing at this movie. And the audience I was with was having a good time laughing at this movie and making fun of it. And, you know, hearing people talk over parts that I could have given a fuck less about, honestly. So I really think the best way to see this movie is to see it with a really rowdy, fun audience. This movie probably has one of the most cop-out movie endings. It's almost such a big cop-out, I think it's a joke. As soon as it ends, it says, go to this website, the Rossi Files, for more info, and everyone was like, what? Oh, like, boo, and screamed at the screen. It's like the audience rejected it. It was like they were so pissed off at the end, because the end was horrible. Like, I have never seen a worse ending, and I don't even think I saw a 3-act film. I think I saw two acts, basically, and kind of a muffled 3rd act, kind of. It's not a good movie. It is a really bad movie. It's a laughably bad movie in some places. And when I was leaving the movie, the audience just kept talking about how bad it was. Like, everyone universally was like, that was a terrible ending. Like, even the dumbest audience member you could find thought that that ending sucked. But honestly, one of my more favorite theater experiences I've had. And those were the 4 worst films of 2012. There's a bunch I considered. You know, Total Recall could have gotten on there. I think those 4 are pretty good. Men in Black 3 wasn't very good either. There's a lot of stuff in the summer I didn't particularly like. I stand by those 4, that those 4 are some of the worst films I've seen this year, absolutely. I hope you don't end up seeing any of these movies, and I hope you have a good 2013 in terms of going to the movies and you don't have to sit through stuff like this. So if you have seen any of the 4 worst films of 2012, leave a comment below in the comments and maybe tell me what your worst film picks of 2012 were, and subscribe if you would like to and haven't already.